hope you're all doing well. This is Steven. I'm here today to talk to you about another interesting piece from the DC Direct, as it was known, a company that was known back in the day. These days they're known as DC Collectibles. What I'm going to talk to you about is a 4-piece box set of Superman Through the Ages that was released several years ago to commemorate Superman as a character. As you can tell, there were four variations of Superman released in it. Most of these are actually just variations of the single-carded figures that were released before these. And these that are in the box set were practically reissued with some modifications. But we'll go into more detail about that later. So let's start with the top row here. In this corner here we have Superman based on the artist known as Jim Lee. He's been drawing Superman and DC comics for a long time, so he's practically a veteran in the field. And this is practically how Superman looks like based on his art. This Superman, as the rest of them, all come with a Superman yellow shield from the cape, shaped as a plastic stand, so that each of them can stand on their own. These stands have been reissued before. Sorry, they were issued before, but in different colors compared to these that are yellow. And the other colors that were available with the single-carded figures were metallic blue and metallic red colors. Anyway, going back to the figures here, in this corner here, we have John Byrne artist interpretation of Superman from roughly end of 1980s. He also drew DC Comics and has been involved in numerous comics in general, and I like his art personally quite a bit. That's the art I remember when I was much younger. And on the bottom here, let's start from this corner right here, we have a Superman robot. That's not really Superman himself, of course not, because Superman is not a robot. This is actually one of the robots that Superman made in one of the stories to practically help him patrol the Earth, because he cannot be in all the places on the planet at the same time. So he created an army of these robots to help him in stopping crime or catastrophes wherever they may occur in the world. And if I remember roughly what that story is about, is that practically these robotic Supermen get out of control and they start causing chaos, and Superman has to stop them. Now this robotic Superman was based on the art of Ed McGuinness. Numerous figures were made based on his art, and this is just one of those, I would say, exclusive versions. And on this side here, we have, of course, the first appearance Superman, the way he looked in the very first issue in 1938, when the first issue of Superman came out. Superman here is quite different in looks than he would be much later on. This particular figure, even though it's inside the package, I already know pretty much how it looks like. He came with a rather very small S shield on his chest, the emblem. He also came with blue boots rather than red. It was changed into red later on, and the shield on the chest was also modified in size and color as the years went by. And this is practically his original appearance, the way he was created back in the day by Joe Shuster and another artist along with him. They have put quite a bit of thought into this, and they have came up with the most popular character which Superman eventually came to be. Now, at the side of on the side flap of the box here, I'm just trying to kind of position it in such a way. It's a very big box though. Practically what you have is just a picture of the 3 figures, so that you can roughly see again what's included in it. And the same picture is also on the other side of the flap of the box as well, on the spine. Now at the back here, you practically get one more thing that comes with the figures, which is this 48-page comic book that contains 4 stories in which, in each of those stories, where one of these Supermen from the figures appeared in. Meaning the robotic Superman, the first appearance one with his legendary image when he's just throwing a car at the bad guys, and of course the Jim Lee one and the John Byrne one. So they're all in here, and of course you have Superman right across the entire page, on the front page, and his parents. This picture is kind of small, but I'll try and zoom in for you. We have here his parents at the time when the planet was about to explode, them sending him in a small ship in order to save him from destruction. So yeah, it's an interesting set in the sense that they came up with the idea of how to reuse the already made figures and just made some variations to represent a particular artist's interpretation of Superman. And it comes, as you can tell, with another nice touch, which is the big plastic window where it displays all 4 figures very clearly, except for the bottom 2 where you cannot really see the legs due to the carton itself being in the way, meaning the portion of the package being in the way. But other than that, it's a pretty nifty one, and from what I understand, it's kind of a little bit more difficult after several years to actually come across it. Anyway, I was talking earlier about the actual first figures that were released way before this box set came out. So I'll just try and show you how those single-carded ones look like that these fellows were based upon. Meaning they were using the same body sculpt and all that sort of thing, and then just made some modifications. So let's start with the first appearance Superman, which I already talked about him, this particular version in one of my other videos. As you can tell, this is first appearance Superman from 1938, and just a small reminder about what this figure is like. He came with very limited articulation. He had a plastic stand, and he belongs to a lineup of DC Direct called the First Appearance, meaning how the characters looked like when they appeared for the very first time in the comics in different years and decades. He came with a cloth cape, which is a very nice touch, because you do not see in DC Direct or DC Collectibles a lot of figures with cloth capes, so this one was a huge exception. He has a pretty big smile on his face, and he looks kind of happy and cheerful fellow. He has his emblem on the chest, which is of course much smaller because that's the way it looked back in the day. Even at that time he was already wearing the red trunks with the yellow belt. And what I was mentioning earlier, in those days he did not have the red boots just yet. His boots were blue. But then again, if you read the first issue of Superman from 1938, you will realize that in some panels of the comic book it seems that his color of the boots is either blue or red. So due to that idea, then initially they were supposed to be blue. Maybe due to the artist's mistake or so forth, they kept switching until in the end it was settled that the boots will be red. So let's just try and compare him a little bit. It's going to be a bit more difficult because this other one is in the box, but we'll try. So that you can see there are some differences between this version and the boxed version. Okay, so roughly this is how they look like side by side. They're practically the same figure as I already mentioned. The differences between the two is that the one on the left here has a cloth cape, has a big smile across the face, and rather sort of a long neck. The way he was sculpted. Now the one in the box, however, let's just put him on the side for a moment. Now the one in the box here, the major difference with him compared to the first one is that the head is a completely different sculpt. It's not reused, and the neck is made shorter because they probably thought the neck is too long in the previous one, so let's just make it a bit smaller in size to make him look more proportionate. The head and the facial expression are definitely different. He's not smiling, he looks more serious in the look here. And the cape, even though I didn't open this, I already did some research how he looks out of the box. He actually has a rubber cape. There is no cloth. So that's the other particular difference that I noticed. Other than that, he looks pretty much the same in regards to other things. Now, of course, I want to mention that his cape, even though it's rubber, it goes pretty much almost all around to the front of him in the sense of just below the throat. While of course, if you look at the same figure here, the first one, the cape only goes as far as the shoulders. It does not go all the way around, or almost all the way around, like it does in the one in the box. So those are the particular differences right there that I can point out off the bat. Other than that, I believe they're very much the same thing, because it's the same body type was used, and there was just some modifications made for the one in the box to look a little bit more, how would I say this, a bit more improved upon in compared to the first release. So let's move on. There is 3 more to cover, and I'll explain the differences, the ones I noticed. This figure right here is Alex Ross' interpretation, for those of you who are familiar with the artist Alex Ross, who makes his characters either in Marvel or in DC very realistic, how they actually look like if they were existing in real life. Superman here has a large, very large emblem on his chest, which is fine, and limited articulation, because DC Direct in the early days was never really known for a lot of articulation. Most of their figures had only the basic moves in the shoulder, in the elbows, and in the wrists. There was no movement in the chest or the waist. He could not do a split. He could bend his legs in the knees somewhat and put his legs up. The cape was not removable, and it was made of soft rubber. Now, what's so interesting to compare this particular Superman is the fact that the same body was reused for one of these fellas that are in the box. The same body was used, I think, more than once. But in this particular case, we're talking about the upper Superman, the one that's made by John Byrne. I wish I could somehow... Okay, it's getting a bit better now if I put it a bit closer. So as you can see, this is practically the same body type, with the differences, of course, because it represents completely 2 different interpretations of Superman based on 2 different artists. But the body type itself is actually the same. The differences are that one has brighter colors of the costume, the other one does not, and the fact that the head sculpting is different. Other than that, they're pretty much the same body-wise. Now, the other character who is also just redone as a variant is Jim Lee's version of Possessed Superman. He's also appearing in the same exact sculpt with only some minor differences in the box set as well. The Superman here, which I already talked about, I mean, in one of the previous videos, he has been possessed in the story called Hush, has been possessed by Poison Ivy, who took a control over him to fight Batman. He has limited articulation. Again, he came with the plastic stand from Batman, and his cape is all torn up. His face has very angry red eyes, and he has the emblem, the yellow emblem, which is nice. It's omitted on many figures, but in this case it's not. Has the emblem of Superman, the yellow one on the cape, and he has also the sculpting of Poison Ivy's plant, who wrapped around his body to be able to mind control him. Now, I will show you the figure that's practically the same, except with some modifications to it. It's also based on Jim Lee, and as I said, it's practically exactly the same figure. So there we go. As you can see, the 2 of them. It is the same figure, except this one on the left here is in brighter colors, and of course Superman does not have angry red eyes, he has normal eyes, and his cape is not torn up, and there is no plant sculpting around it. Other than that, they're exactly the same. As I said, with only some small improvements here and there, or deviations from the original. And then the final figure that's been used to make the robot Superman, based on Ed McGuinness art. And this is how the Superman figure itself looks like as a single card, based on Ed McGuinness. He has a typical style that's practically all the characters who are masculine in appearance, they all look the same, in the sense just like Superman here. I have a few figures from that set, not the entire series because there were several of them released again by DC Direct, and I only have some. Anyway, he also came with the soft rubber cape that's not removable. Articulation is to be expected to be pretty much the same as all the other ones, and limited in some ways, so you cannot expect this to be like Marvel Legends level articulation. And other than that, he has a bit of a metallic blue colors on his costume, except for the red color, which is just plain red for the most part. But I will show you how he looks next to his next to his robot Superman. So here we go. They're right there side by side, and actually there isn't much of a difference between these two fellows except the head. The colors are some difference in color because the robot has more sort of a darker tone to it, while Superman's is more metallic in appearance, and with some bright red coloring mixed in, while the robot is more darker looking in the sense that he looks almost like Bizarro, or another version of Bizarro. How, by the way, Bizarro was released in this style as well, but as a single carded figures. They all share the same body type, and only the heads being different and some coloring, but other than that the sculpt is the same. And the only other thing, of course, that's different between them is that the robot Superman has a robotic head, obviously, with some detail on the face. But in reality, all of these figures were based upon the figures that already existed, and then just modified and tweaked a bit to look like Robot Superman here, and create a new character, in a way, or a variation of already existing one. Anyway, that's all that I can tell you about this particular topic. I hope you guys enjoyed this prolonged discussion on the subject, and I hope I didn't put you to sleep with it. But that's it for now. I am still going to show you some other Superman items from the DC Direct, but that's yet to come. So I hope you enjoyed this, and catch you guys next time. Bye.